I just hear a little bit more about what's happening at NC State University, and I know that their approach to governance is sort of a combination of centralized and decentralized. So certain core important decisions and aspects of content, especially as it relates to branding or identity across the whole university, those are a bit more centralized. And then there's some guidelines that have some flexibility for the more individual programs. And I know that for NC State, that has helped with kind of avoiding or moving past some of the arguments that can happen around consistency and brand identity, and I think consistency and brand identity can be misinterpreted, especially for a large organization, as we each have to use the exact same presence with the exact same message and the exact same form, and that's not really what it means. You've got to have some core messages and some core elements, of course, that unify you, but you have different programs and different areas of focus throughout the university for a reason. Yeah. And so that kind of mixed approach of there's some things that really have to be the exact same across all of these different groups, and there's some things where there's some room for flexibility within the parameters of these guidelines. That's worked very well for them, and I think for especially a larger organization, that makes sense. Now, a colleague of mine, Todd Bennett, who used to be a consultant and now he works for Oglethorpe, but in the past, he when he was a consultant, he worked with Agnes Scott College, and they actually had an unusual, or at least what struck me as unusual, an unusual situation where they were almost over-centralizing content, and they were creating backlogs and holdups and delays because essentially one person was trying to review and prove every single bit of content that went out to represent the university.
Sounds like the classic bottleneck of legal that we see in corporations.
Yeah, exactly. And so they've made some progress in loosening that up a little bit, getting rid of the bottlenecks, but still trying to have that firm governance in place. So it really depends on the situation and what the problems are, but those are some examples of just different types of problems and how governance has helped with overcoming them.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen in different universities, I guess my big takeaway is always that there is no one perfect governance model, but it varies depending on whether it's a different corporate culture or a different university culture and scale, as far as what they expect for individual control, or if it's the type of place where they expect, okay, I'm going to submit all of my stuff to an editor who will make sure that it's consistent. And I think that's some of what you were talking about, where content needs to be consistent but not necessarily repetitive as you move department to department and between undergrad and graduate facing content, or even the content that faces prospective students and current students and maybe parents and folks out in the community and all. So I haven't seen any one perfect governance model. I think in the most successful cases that I've seen, though, governance is something that is owned maybe by an editor-in-chief or somebody like that within a marketing department. In general, they seem to be able to better balance the technical requirements, maybe compliance requirements of the university, as well as the people processes of the organization that they're dealing with, and the people that are creating content. They seem to be able to kind of best balance those sometimes conflicting needs, especially as the CMS is involved and all. But then from there, I've seen in some organizations where they're fine with a very decentralized model, and they've created guidelines that may be very loose. I know at Harvard for a long time, the only thing that was very consistent across its web properties was a very thin banner across the top that had the highest level of navigation in it, and everything else, even to a degree the style and tone, very much varied depending on the department that was publishing it. In other organizations, I'm working with a university right now that is kind of leaving behind that model of decentralized, kind of free-for-all content creation and publishing, and they're trying to centralize it a little bit more. They're saying, okay, subject matter experts, you stay where you are out in different departments. That's where you should be. You know best what's going on in those departments, but you don't necessarily know best how to write about it, how to report on it, how to publish it to a CMS, how to determine the frequency at which we should be archiving content within it and that type of thing. So instead, they're moving to more of like kind of a beat system with like beat reporters that cover those different departments, reach out to different subject matter experts in them to find out what's going on, and it's those reporters who are actually, I believe, journalism majors within the school, so they'll be changing out every semester or so. They live within and sort of report to the marketing department. They each cover a particular topic that feeds back to the message architecture that the university is using now. So they'll be able to report on those different topics, come together around specific themes so that they might be able to have maybe it's a topic around like the rigorous educational standards at the university. They might go live in September with articles on that as far as how it relates in the music department, the biology department. If you're considering applying to the school, how you should be thinking of it as a high school student, that type of thing. So that team within the marketing department will be reporting on those topics, and then a team within that group, a much smaller team, is then responsible for maintaining consistency in terms of how it's published, how it's tagged, all of those type of things within the CMS.